Bright Tuty. Every student matters.
So the last thing that we read was when the writer asked Stephen Hawking if, when he hears this from the people that you are an inspiration for us, you motivate us, if that helped him, in whatever bit it can. And Stephen Hawking replied in negative. He said no. And the writer immediately realized that it was a very stupid question that he had asked Stephen Hawking. So, when your body is a claustrophobic room and the walls are growing narrower day by day, it does not do much good to know that there are people outside smiling with admiration to see you breathing still. So, when your body is claustrophobic, what do we mean by claustrophobic? Something which is very close, very small and suffocating. So here the body of Stephen Hawking has been described as claustrophobic because it was getting narrower day by day. He was getting shrunk day by day. His body was, giving away. His age was growing, which was obviously making things more difficult for him to live. So at that time, when your life is already going through a lot of problems, it hardly matters when somebody tells you that the other people outside are admiring you, that they are getting inspired by you. So such thoughts hardly affect you. Is there any advice you would like to give to the disabled people? Something that might help make life better? They should concentrate on what they are good at. I think things like the Disabled Olympics are a waste of time. So the writer asked him if he had any advices that he could give to the disabled people. And at that time, Stephen Hawking told him that he just wanted the disabled people to concentrate, to focus on the things that they are good at. Okay, and then he used the example of Disabled Olympics by saying that for him, Disabled Olympics are a waste of time. He did not think there is anything good in Disabled Olympics because you are doing things maybe which are against your will. You are doing things which are causing you all the more pain, okay, other than the pain you already have. So he did not like that idea at all. I know what you mean. I remembered the years I'd spent trying to play a Spanish guitar, considerably larger than I was, and how gleefully I unstringed it one night. So, he told us that he referred to an incident where the writer himself had tried to play guitar. So, he had learned to play Spanish, guitar. He was learning to play guitar. And then he says that one night he was so frustrated by it that he unstringed it gleefully. Gleefully, what do we mean by gleefully? Gleefully means very happily. He was very glad when he actually just, he broke the guitar. So he was very happy when he did that. Okay. He unstringed the guitar one night. He just, tore off its strings. All right. There were we. Yes. The half hour was up. I think I've annoyed you enough, I said, grinning. So his meeting time with the author, with Stephen Hawking, was over. And he started grinning. He had a broad smile on his face and he said, I think I have irritated you, I have troubled you enough. Thank you for, and then he could not continue with his sentence because he was interrupted by Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking said, stay. I waited. Have some tea, I can show you the garden. So the half an hour was up and our writer was ready to move out, but Stephen Hawking stopped him and did not leave him without having a cup of tea and also offered to show him his garden. The garden was as big as a park, but Stephen Hawking covered every inch, rumbling along it in his motorized wheelchair while I dodged to keep out of the way. We could not talk very much. The sun made him still, the letters on his screen disappearing in the glare. So, the garden of Stephen Hawking's house was as big as a park, and Stephen Hawking showed him the park, showed him every inch of his garden, rumbling along in his motorized wheelchair. Rumbling is the sound when a motor vehicle starts, when it moves. There is some sound that we all can hear. So the sound of that motorized vehicle could be heard, and he covered every inch and showed it to the writer. I dodged to keep out of the way. Dodged to keep out of the way. Now still, since both of them were walking in their wheelchairs, our writer was afraid that his wheelchair might come in the way of Stephen Hawking. So he was trying very hard not to do that. We could not talk very much. The sun made him silent. Now, why did the sun make Stephen Hawking silent? Because the sun was shining on his computer screen. He could not see the words and the buttons on his computer screen, and thus he did not say anything at all. An hour later, we were ready to leave. I did not know what to do. I could not kiss him or cry. I touched his shoulder and wheeled out into the summer evening. I looked back and I knew he was waving, though he was not. Watching him, an embodiment of my bravest self, the one I was moving towards, the one I had believed in for so many years. Alone, I knew that my journey was over for now. So the writer further continues that his meeting, which was scheduled for half an hour, that continued for an hour, and they were ready to leave. So they were ready to depart from each other. He says that I did not know what to do. He did not know how to bid him goodbye. He could not kiss him or could cry. He simply touched his shoulders and he moved out in his wheelchair. He looked back and he actually assumed that Stephen Hawking would be waving at him. Waving, when you wave at somebody, when you say bye to somebody. But when he looked around, obviously that was not the case. And at that time, when the writer saw Stephen Hawking, he realized that in front of him was a man who was the embodiment of his self. Embodiment, he was an idol. He was a man who was an inspiration for all. He was an idol of courage. So he was brave and he was certainly an inspiration for him. So he moved forward, he came back, and for many years, the writer tells us that for many years, he did not have this feeling of looking back. But why? Because he thought that his journey was over. What kind of a journey was over for the writer? The journey of his struggles. The journey of feeling demotivated. The journey of feeling bad about himself and his body. The feeling of, the journey of being sad that he would not be able to do things that the other people are possibly doing. Because now, after meeting Stephen Hawking, he's realized that he's capable of doing things even better than them. So with this, my dear students, we come to the end of this story. So what have we read in this story? We read about Firdaus Kanga. Firdaus Kanga was a writer and a journalist from Mumbai. He'd gone to England for a tour, and his guide reminded him about Stephen Hawking, the great scientist who was now the successor of Isaac Newton at the Cambridge University. As soon as his tour was over, our writer, he went to the nearby telephone booth and he called up Stephen Hawking's residence. Now, the phone was answered by his assistant, and the writer got himself an appointment to meet Stephen Hawking the next day for half an hour from 3:30 to 4 in the afternoon. Now, when he went to meet Stephen Hawking, the first thought that came to his mind was that in front of him was a man who was although still like a photograph, but now he could look at him in a three-dimensional manner. So his three-dimensional figure was visible to the writer. He started talking to Stephen Hawking and they discussed about a lot of things. They talked about how Stephen Hawking felt very funny when the people considered him to be, inferior to them. When the people pitied on him, he felt very amusing at that time. The author also told him about, or rather asked him if he was troubling him, and the answer of Stephen Hawking was yes in a moment. They discussed about the things that the disabled people should do, and Stephen Hawking believed that the disabled people should do what they think they are good at rather than just going with the crowd. This made our writer remember one of his own incidents where he was learning to play the Spanish guitar, but he got so irritated one night that he unstringed it. It was time for the writer to leave, to bid him goodbye, but Stephen Hawking insisted on him staying a little longer and to have a cup of tea with him, and he also offered to show him his garden. On his motorized wheelchair, Stephen Hawking showed the author every inch of his garden. And the author, when he finally was coming, he assumed that Stephen Hawking was bidding him goodbye by waving at him. But obviously that was not possible. The author did not know what to say, how to say, so he simply touched his shoulders and he looked at the man who was an embodiment of a brave man, who was an embodiment of courage and bravery. And it was only because of Stephen Hawking that our author realized that now his struggle of dealing with his physical disability was over, because he's realized what all miracles he can do with his body. So my dear students, I'm going to pause here now. In my next video, I shall discuss with you the back exercises of this chapter. So I shall see you all now in my next lecture.